it's really fascinating. So imagine this. You're living in Kenya.
Okay.
You're facing struggles every day.
Right.
And these are struggles that someone in the UK might not ever have to deal with.
Yeah.
Over there, they have the NHS and all these welfare programs to help them out.
Like a safety net.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what we're looking at today, this big difference, this gap between these two places. And it all comes down to this one kind of bold claim.
Let's hear it.
They're saying that greed from the past, has actually created this huge difference, this inequality that we see today.
Wow.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. I mean, it's a pretty powerful statement, isn't it? Comparing life in Kenya and the UK and then saying that it all goes back to choices made, like generations ago.
Yeah, exactly. And the source even points out these systems like the NHS, the UK's National Health Service and all their welfare programs. It's like they're trying to fix things, trying to make things fairer.
Yeah, and I think it makes you think about, the different values baked into how these different societies are set up.
Right.
Like, should healthcare be something everyone gets no matter how much money they have? Or is it a privilege?
Totally.
I was actually reading about the history of the NHS.
Oh, no.
It's really interesting. So it came from this idea that everyone should have healthcare, that it's a right not just for the wealthy.
That's a powerful idea.
It really is. But what's interesting?
What's that?
The statement doesn't just say, oh, things are unequal. It actually points a finger at something. It says greed is to blame.
Greed, huh? That's a strong word.
Or
What do they mean by that, do you think? Are they talking about people being selfish, or is it something bigger?
That's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah. Is it just individuals being greedy, or is it like the whole system? Like maybe some economic policies that help the rich get richer while others struggle.
I mean, it definitely makes you think about different economic systems, right? Like capitalism, people always say it makes the rich richer, but then you have things like socialism, which are supposed to spread the wealth more evenly.
Yeah, it's not about saying one system is good and the other is bad, but just seeing how they actually affect people's lives.
For sure.
It's a lot to think about. We're talking about history, economics, even like philosophy.
Absolutely.
It's really deep. Oh, and speaking of different points of view, the person who made this statement, their name is Dr. Raja King. And they're the editor of the Journal of Islamic Psychology and Philosophy.
Interesting.
Yeah, do you think that background has anything to do with their perspective on all this?
I mean, it's easy to connect the dots, right? Like Islam really emphasizes things like social justice and taking care of your community, so maybe that's playing a role here.
Yeah, makes sense.
But we should be careful not to jump to conclusions, Just because someone comes from a certain background doesn't mean we know exactly how they think. What's important is to look at their argument, see if it makes sense, if it's based on facts.
Totally agree. So we've got this thought-provoking statement, all this historical context, and now we're considering the speaker's background. It's a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
So where does this all leave us? What should we be taking away from this deep dive?
Well, I think the real takeaway here is the questions this statement raises, It forces us to think, okay, how do things that happened in the past, maybe choices people made, maybe systems that were put in place, how do those things affect us now?
Right, like long-term consequences.
Exactly. Like think about colonialism. Those countries that were colonized, they're often still dealing with the economic consequences of that. Or global trade policies. Some countries might benefit, but others might get hurt. It's complicated.
So this statement is just like a starting point.
It is. It's like someone handed us a map, but we get to choose where we want to explore.
I like that analogy.
And as you explore, think about this. How do different cultures or religions view things like wealth and poverty and responsibility?
Right.
And are there other ways, other models for a more just world that we haven't even considered yet? These are the kind of questions I hope you'll keep thinking about after this deep dive.
That's what it's all about. Food for thought.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.